Right, welcome everyone. Welcome to this special edition of the Bristol DataViz Interest Group as part of the Jean Golding Institute's Bristol Data Week 2024 event. Just a lightning fast introduction to what the Bristol DataViz Group is. We are an interest group that's run out of the university, but we're not solely for university members. We're open to anyone. You don't even have to be in Bristol. And we're interested in anything that's to do with data visualization. So it's not necessarily just graphs, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And we run roughly monthly events, and the focus is to Skillshare, discuss different aspects of data visualization or highlight great examples of data visualization, especially where you're representing large-scale data in interesting ways. And one of the areas where data visualization is particularly important is in geospatial data, which brings us on to our talk today, which is by Rich Sanders from NHS South, Central and West. So Rich is a geospatial consultant who studied at the University of the West of England in Bristol and has since worked for Sustrans, Public Health England, and now the NHS. And he'll be talking today about the geospatial analysis and associated tools that have been developed. And there's a little bit of a demo a bit later on, and with a specific emphasis on the measles elimination strategy. So I'm going to stop sharing and let Rich share his screen now, but thank you very much. Over to you, Rich.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And thanks to everyone for attending this morning. It's really nice seeing the numbers of attendees pop up, although slightly heart racing. I've managed to assemble quite a few slides, so I'll try and crack on without too much preamble. As per the introduction, my name is Rich Sanders. I'm a geospatial consultant within the Geospatial Services at NHS South, Central and West. We call ourselves SCW. So first, a bit about our service, like our little department, and what we do. If I ever try and explain it to people, I'm always asked, why does the NHS need maps? Or people tend to assume they know what we're doing, so they go, oh, yeah, you must be in charge of sat navs or ambulances or something. So I think a bit of explanation will probably give you a good idea of what we do. So we're a service that's been around in its current form, although growing both in size and technical capability for about 20 years. So even when I started, which was about 8 years ago, we were producing a lot of static and even paper maps. So the other week I popped into Hampton House, which is the Bristol Uni building a couple of weeks ago. Our IT service desk team are currently there, as we're between offices. I spotted one of our old paper maps showing the GP practices in the Bristol, North Somerset and South Gloss area. Our IT team provides kit for GP practices. SCW does quite a few different things as an organisation. So just simply knowing where the kit has to go is of everyday use to them. These days, we tend to provide solutions as online maps and dashboards. So that this slide is just basically saying, old world was a lot of paper maps and PDFs. These days, it's more familiar modern things like more like dashboards and dashboards and online maps. The next slide. So this is our team. It's currently 22. I think it was only 6 when I started. The majority of us are geospatial analysts, and our current and past staff have included plenty of University of Bristol graduates. We've got a senior team, which includes our head of service, our associate head, our lead developer, and our technical manager. We've also got 2 non-geographic staff whose focus is on, I'd say, the nuts and bolts of the business. We also have a couple of consultants, including myself, who have done analysis in the past and currently, and also look for new business. There's me. So, why do you need a business team in public sector in the NHS? Well, you'll be aware that the country's split up in many ways. There's an upcoming election, so we're all pretty aware of parliamentary constituencies. The country is also divided up into tiers of unitary authorities and counties. So there's the counties like Cornwall, Devon, etc. at the bottom. And then further divided, some black lines up here, into districts. Like districts, like slightly smaller divisions. So the NHS landscape is also organised in a similar way into there's national bodies like the whole of NHS England. There are also regional ones like NHS England regions. There are 7 of those. So we're in the southwest. There's also South East London, East Midlands, North West, and North East and Yorkshire. And then there are more local organisations called integrated care boards, where these darker blue lines are added here. My house, Bristol University, sits within the footprint of an ICB called BNSSG, which is Bristol, North Somerset and South Gloucestershire. Let's get one thing clear from the start. The NHS loves an acronym. We're being a bit pedantic and the visualisation. These ICBs have working relationships with local authorities with integrated care systems. And the ICBs have an especially important relationship with thousands of GP practices nationally. So what I've added to the map now is a brown doctor's bag showing all the GP practices are. The ICBs have relationships with GP practices, also increasingly for pharmacy, dentistry, and optometry, or pharmacy, optometry, dental. We call this self-referred access to point of healthcare primary care. So where you take yourself to a pharmacist or a GP and say, I need some care. A&E, accident emergency, is a little bit different because that takes place in hospitals. There are also hundreds of hospitals around the country. These are organised into trusts. So why am I saying this? Well, partly it's an example of why maps are useful, why geospatial is useful within the NHS landscape. We're what's called a commissioning support unit, or CSU. There have been CSUs for the past few years, originally allied with what were the precursors to the ICBs, which is why the organisation I currently work for is called South, Central and West. So there are regional CSUs, but we're now all busily merging into a single national CSU. Under New Labour's drive in the 1990s to make public sector services more accountable and have more in common with the way private business works, we need to win work from NHS partners. So although we can branch out further into the health landscape, occasionally work with private departments. So just to say that we need to work that doesn't come here. We actually need to put in bids. We need to win work from our partner organisations. So like many organisations, we've got their vision, mission and description. I don't usually like reading out slides. I prefer them to sort of add context to what I'm saying. I think it's useful to have these. So as a team, SCW Geospatial, our vision is improving the health of the population by leveraging the power of location-based data. So that's why we're here for the DataViz Group. Our mission is empowering our partners to solve healthcare challenges using location intelligence to support data-driven decision-making with actionable insights. Now, description about answers. To analyse, visualise and inform a dedicated team of geospatial professionals addressing location-based healthcare challenges through innovative solutions. We've got this slide that is a bit Tony start to me, which I think is useful. On the left, it shows us service areas or work themes. So we've got data-driven consultancy, visualization of data, bespoke software, service reconfiguration, that's how you can do things better in better places, efficiency, so lots of capabilities. And the service areas are the kind of areas where we work. So primary care with GPs and pod. We've done work around workforce and estates, so where buildings are and where the people who work there are and how you can rearrange things to make them more efficient. Screening and immunisation work, which is what I'm going to be speaking about later. Secondary and tertiary care, so that's hospitals. Carbon net zero is a big thing for the NHS. It's a huge organisation, so there's big carbon footprints to do something about. And also health inequalities is a huge issue for the NHS. So ensuring people, the idea is that everyone has equal access to healthcare. It's not the case. There are some people in an unequal situation that needs addressing and trying to make things fair and fair. So everything I've said is probably a little bit high level. I don't mean clever, I just mean probably lacking detail. And it probably makes you wonder what we actually do. So here's hopefully a practical example of something we make. So this is GP Map. It's an application we provide either to individual GP practices or the ICBs, those sort of sub-regional organisations that support them. It's a simple yet powerful application and give valuable insight into the GP practices, the patients who are registered there, and their boundaries. Here's what it looks like. You access it through a web browser. And just to say, this is a demo. This is a fictional practice with not data. So hope you can just make out this is in Oxford, but this is a made-up practice, made-up patients, made-up boundaries. So I'm not looking at any personally identifiable data. A little bit more on that. It's always an important theme with the NHS particularly. So what does this app show? So first of all, I've added from the menus on the right the locations of a main GP practice and also a branch surgery. So this is typically how GP practice works. There'll be a big main surgery, and there's often a branch, which is typically a sort of smaller satellite location. It might have fewer staff, smaller opening hours, slightly smaller office, But this is the sort of, the estate of the GP practice, these two sites. The next really important piece of information is the GP practice boundary. So this can be used to make a visualization on the GP practice boundary website. With this boundary, basically anyone who lives, is resident within this boundary, is eligible to register at the GP practice. Very useful thing to have on your practice website, very useful thing for a practice to work out. So if somebody pitches up, so can I register? You can use this to work out where they live and whether or not they're eligible to register at the practice. It's also, an essential first step to have a clear visualization of the boundary so that you can work out any changes need to be made. Next important piece of data the GP map shows is the population. I was fairly astounded by this when I started at CW and saw this. We have a regularly refreshed data feed showing you where everyone in the country is registered to a GP practice. Bear in mind this is fiction data, but the real data looks a lot like this. Each of these green and blue blobs are postcodes where there are patients registered to a GP practice, and bigger points or blobs show more people. So it shows you a sort of population density of people registered to a GP practice. So it shows you the area, and it shows you that also there's a few people who seem to be registered who sort of splurged off to the sides. That usually indicates something like the practice boundary has changed, or perhaps some of these people moved house, trying to find a bigger house on the edge of town, or something's gone wrong when they registered. So really interesting to see the distribution of patients. The next important thing is about accessibility. Really important issue with the NHS and health services. So these coloured things are added to the map, isochrones, which show you the zones of accessibility. So what is within a 5, 10, 15 minutes travel to the branch, to the main GP, main branch of the surgery. Here I've shown it by walking, but we can also investigate other transport modes, such as driving, public transport, and cycling. And then there are pie charts on the left showing you the numbers and percentage of the people registered to a GP practice who live in these zones of 5 or 10 or 15 minutes of the practice. This idea of accessibility is really, really important to healthcare, making sure that it's fair and equal. Okay, so that's hopefully a good example of good, simple but very practical and used all the time example of how we use geospatial to create a visualization that's useful to the NHS. But we can do a bit more of a wraparound sort of solution as well. So things sometimes get complicated. You'll be aware from the news or going to the GP or talking remotely to the GP, but GP practices are often working under terrific pressure. It's really hard for them to see all their patients. Often there aren't enough GPs, particularly in rural areas where it's not group. You might have practices where the staff are working part-time. It's a one-man band based on retirement. So sometimes practices, sadly, are struggling and a practice may face closure. So over 400 practices have closed in the last 9 years. So our work can directly support the ICBs, the organisations that manage and support the GP practices, for whom a practice closure can be a really stressful situation with a great deal of uncertainty and an awful lot of responsibility in terms of their duty of care for people registered to the GP practice. The top priority is always patient safety, and what that means is making sure that the patient always has a GP and they know where to turn for the care they need. So they need to know what are the options, if the practice were to close, what are the options for the patient? And that effectively means what nearby GP practices might they be able to be rehoused or reallocated to by finding a new place there. Can we help the ICB and effectively divvy up or allocate this list of patients among surrounding practices? And the patient's choice be considered, probably the second most important thing to patient safety is patient choice. And then anything that's done, is it defensive? Is it done, is it done in the back of a small bit of paper, or is it, done in an accountable way? So that either audited or a patient say, why have I been sent to this practice? Can you say exactly what was done and why you did it? And this is the sort of area where really as a dedicated geospatial analytics service can really, really help, and that can obviously be not only end-to-end service. So I'll try and illustrate what we do. So here again is this fictional practice in Oxford. Change the distribution of the patients a little bit, but hopefully it'll illustrate things. So you've got your green practice boundary area, In orange, you've got postcode blobs where patients live. And this needs understanding properly to make sure that this is 100% the right list of patients. So that's understanding of the correct population. The next bit to bring up these, so there will be some other GP practices nearby, and they'll also. So you need to understand this. So the first bit to do is investigate these boundaries, start discussion with the nearby practices, and make sure all their boundaries are. You make big efforts to make sure that it's possible for a GP practice to update their boundary, but we'll always connect to make sure that there's one version of the truth. Everyone's talking about the same thing, and you don't have the situation where somebody suggested that somebody should go to a practice, but they're not doing it. It's a very careful this as well. I've chosen quite a simple example with 3 boundaries showing a bit of overlap. Realistically, there tend to be much more boundaries, not being overlap, so patients have more things, but hopefully this illustrates things properly. We can then undertake a spatial analysis. So for each of these practices, so effectively there's a pink one, a red one, and a blue one. How many patients fall within the catchment area of that practice? So what's effectively not likely the maximum number of patients that this practice might take. We can then undertake some travel analysis to not just say what's the maximum, but what's the likelihood. So you can make a model, like you can come up with something sensible, like, but assume every patient chooses to go to the practice that the closest trip for them, the closest journey by walking or by cycling or the transport. So that's a defensible, fairly sensible way of modeling patient behaviour. Or we could look at it another way. We could pick on a single postcode and say, on this postcode, 20% of patients already choose to go to this practice, 40% for this one, 10% for this one. Let's allocate the patients according to existing patterns. So we've got a couple of ways of modelling likely patient behaviour and getting the ICB who's prepared for if the patient, if the practice did have to close, saying, well, how many patients might go to each one? So that would be the result of this. So imagine we've sort of allocated this many pink patients to the pink practice, red ones to the red one, blue to the blue. And we've got an idea of the likely impact of the closure so that the ICB can start talking to nearby practices and saying, this is the situation. Would you be prepared to accept this many patients? The practices can be in very different situations. Sometimes they can be very eager to take this many patients because they get additional money, having many patients in their books. But if that practice is struggling as well, they won't be so eager to take more patients. So they push back a bit and those have to be made. So that's sort of the preparation stage. If the closure does look like going things, then patient choice needs to be different. So we can do analysis to work out. So in these overlapping areas, so in the middle, patients might have a choice of 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, 5, 6 different practices. We can create an online survey that goes out to patients. They put in a unique code rather than their depth or detail. So we're not sharing any patient identifiable information on the internet. We then give them choices, and there will be valid choices once the patient got in boundary. And then all this information can come back to our central database, and we can work out what patient choice is. We've had some really good, when we've done this, we've had really good patient uptake. Like 50–60% of patients have been on the survey, which is brilliant for any survey. Typically, we only get about 5 or 10% of people on the survey, but obviously this is important to people. Some people will fill in a paper form and will get the same information. This can be manually inputted. Some people just won't engage with a choice exercise like this, so we'll come up with something defensively based on travel and accessibility, and also for any patients with priority, less mobile numbers and to be given someone close by. So we can run a complete model and offer the ICB support. For example, it's effectively a problem. What do you do to allocate patients fairly, make sure you dealt with their age responsibly, not been a choice? So hopefully that's a good tangible example of the kind of work we do. So on to the next bit. I've given you an idea of how geospatial is useful to the NHS. So on to what I'm supposed to be talking about, which is MMR and measles. So I think the title of the talk is measles. We often refer to it as MMR, which is the immunisation program, so the vaccine given to combat measles. MMR stands for measles, mumps, and rubella. It's a vaccine program typically given in childhood, so it's three diseases in one, and that's what we're trying to increase the uptake of the NMR vaccination. So we started this work because we were working with NHS England, the NHS England Southwest public health team. And we've been working with cancer screening applications. So this application shows all GP practices in the Southwest, and it shows you the rates of different uptake of various cancer screening programs. So cervical screening, bowel screening, breast screening. Cancer screening is really important stuff. I'm sure most people are aware, but people get cancer early within the screening program. If you get the cancer early, outcomes are much more positive. I'm not a clinician. I can talk about some great detail, but screening is important stuff. It's a really important element of the work that I can do. Uptake is related to the wider determinants of health. So typically, people in the 5 areas have worse health outcomes than they would screen for. So it's really important that public health teams have a good idea of their screening protectors, who they're going to expand. So all these points are graduated into sort of green being better, and then into the attention, red worse, even more attention. And these little graphs are showing you the eligible population eligible for different screening programs by comparison with in the screen for each of the 7 ICBs in the Southwest. So there's Cornwall, Devon, Somerset, Dorset, BSW, which is Barton and Yorkshire, the NHS, Bristol and Sussex Southwest, and Worcestershire up here. So that's what happens. Next slide is so the Southwest wanted to talk to me about measles. So, to my mind, it sounded like a childhood illness, but it's really serious. It's the most infectious disease spread by the respiratory route. Yes, that's right. The most infectious. Sometimes it's mild, but it can be really severe and cause complications like pneumonia and colitis and even death. In 1980, 2.6 million people died of measles. That's carefully researched from but there's a safe and effective vaccine. So by 1990, just over 500,000 people had died. By 2014, we went to down to 73,000. However, globally, rates of disease and death increased again from 2017 to 2019 due to a decrease in immunisation of so there's a huge problem to diseases becoming spreading within everybody. And it was obviously a colossal financial risk. Look at COVID, the impact of the industry of food prices, and the dentists, and the colossal impact on businesses. It's really important that wherever possible it is, diseases are affecting the In the UK, measles shouldn't really be an issue. We've achieved what's called elimination status for food. The World Health Organization is 95% of the population should be vaccinated. In what's called developed countries, where measles is rarer than the developing world, the recommendation is generally 2 doses. So 1 at 12 months old, not earlier because the immune system is going to maturing. And second, at age around 5. So that's what we're trying to aim for. 95% of people having had 2 grams by age 3 to 5. As I said before, things have slipped. The rate in England, in the UK, isn't 95%, it's more like 85%. It's only 10% less, but it's not the level recommended by the WHO to have that level of herd immunity and stopping outbreak of the case of current. So the rate for 2 MMR drugs in England was below 85%. And very significantly, there was a real dip just after year 2000. Which is attributed to a controversy around vaccination in autism. It's since been discovered that had a really big impact on levels of immunisation. Vaccination rates then recovered from 2003 to 2014, and then it declined a little bit, probably in part due to the impact of COVID and vaccination hesitancy. So it's hard for people to get to their services and to get to put up with continuous vaccination programs, which is it's a big issue. Next slide. So, and what that's led to is, I'm sure you've seen it in the news, there have been cases of measles only that significant numbers. And there's once again a need for a new measles elimination strategy created by NHS England. So, what can the geospatial team do to implement? So, talking to NHS in the Southwest, they started talking to me about MMR data. So they're using this Novella vaccination uptake data, particularly in children. This comes from CHIS services, or Child Health Information Services. This is effectively a clinical care record system for all children in England, but particularly the public health intervention, so screening and immunisation, and also notified clinical trial program. The Southwest has several CHIS teams. The Southwest Public Health Team, NHS England South Health Team, Public Health Team, what's called the data controllers, so the data effectively belongs to them. So they'd ask all their CHIS teams to send in a big combined data set of MMR vaccinations for all children with multi-19 for those 7 ICBs in the Southwest. So just a quick highlight of what we're trying to stay behind. We had a chat about what we could do about this. So our team supported around vaccinations like months, particularly around COVID pandemic. And we agreed, from what we've done before, we agreed with NHS in the Southwest that it would be worth sharing some data with us and working out what we could do with it. So basically what they sent us was a really big spreadsheet, hundreds of thousands of children's immunisation records. As I hope before, I said before, we're really careful, really big. So we have to do all kinds of sort of due diligence forms like data impact assessment forms before we share anything. We also never want to know about anything we don't want to see. So you might need to know names in NHS and if it's something like that, patient risk dispersal, or if it's going to be received letters. But we never want to see things that aren't relevant to the analysis we're doing. So in this case, we need to know vaccination status of individuals, their age or their age groups, their ethnic group, which is relevant, their location, and a couple of other bits of information about what GP practice they're registered to, and what school they're at. So not patient identifiable information, but it's certainly got some clinical sensitivity to it, and not baseline example. So here's a bit of the real world. This is our mapping software showing some satellite imagery through the Earth. So each person in the jar has an address, building where they live. So using my simulating design skills to following a polygon that goes onto a single house. We don't really want to know about individual houses for every reason. We don't really care, but we do want to show patterns. But we do want to show some granularity. We don't want the household level. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. So here, the census can really help us. So if I zoom out a bit, you see that we're in South Bristol, but there's the new map that was laid down for the last couple of years. Zoom out a bit, so it's getting a bit powers of 10. Starts in a bit more Bristol. There's the floating harbour, there's Queen Square, there's Lloyd's Amphitheatre. This is a bit hard to look at though, so let's simplify them a little bit. But swapping out that satellite imagery for sort of grey schematic map background, it's easy to scale out the features on top. So now you can see that what we've got here are little dividing areas that things like these ones are called lower super areas, or LSOAs. Well, I have put ones that are probably called regions. About 1,600 people live in an LSOA. You can see that regional house right in the middle of the image. So actually what we want to do is aggregate up to LSOA, plus the age, ethnicity, and do calculations to tell us which of these people have been vaccinated and fully. LSOAs are really useful. So they're the building blocks of many other administrative boundaries, such as the local authorities and the care with the spoke at the start. And because they're created by Office for National Statistics, publishes a census, there's more data you can combine with it. So the census can tell us more things for an area. What's the level of declaration? So each LSOA is given an IMD decile. One is only 10% list of 5 areas per country, 10 is the most affluent. The NHS has an initiative with 20, which is focusing on areas where it's IMD decile 1 and 2. So the 20% is deprived population in the country, where there are always health inequalities. We bring all this information together, so that vaccination data, we aggregate the outcomes in the LSOA, and create an online mapping information. So I would 100% love to show you one of the dashboards we've created, but our IG board is pretty clear. Not only do we take the minimum data we need, but we also show it to those only for whom it's explicitly provided. So It is provided for NHS England public health colleagues working back to Measles, and our salaries and the fees are from recently to that's better, but I'm afraid I can't show it at the moment. So I've created another demo application from you guys. I'm going to try and do a live demo. You probably know what Bristol DataViz team, they're running proactive, but also really professional. So when I said I'm doing a live demo, and they said, "Oh yeah, live demo, you're brave." I do have some backup slides in case this works, so I'm going to try and switch screens over just to get a live demo up. And fingers crossed this really works. So, I'm hoping this will show you. It's another around mapping applications. So I hope this looks right. So a little bit. So you'll notice this is in Wales. Our team only works in England, so this is a fiction of ICB that I sort of made up covering, a large spread of Wales. Just to make it clear, this isn't the wrong data. It's an interactive map, so you can see pan, zoom, and some people and a lot of geospatial outputs. And the primary thing you can see here is a blue heat map or polygon. Polygons are the LSOAs that I spoke about earlier. And that colour is important. Darker colours indicate a low vaccination uptake. Lighter means a higher uptake. So we have a happier stores, the darker areas we're going to focus on. On the bottom left, there are two pie charts, and these show what proportion of the population currently shown, according to the process or anything, have had MMR1 or MMR2 vaccination. So the MMR1 rate that is 11%, MMR2 at 83.193%. So pretty much in line with national averages. So pretty typically not quite high, sadly. So let me zoom in to another, zoom down to some of them. The second area, we can bring up some of the underlying information. So this will show you that this particular LSOA is in planning SL2 because it's more than 20% most applied area they typically get really low levels of vaccination. You're showing the active all on this. 252 of 308 eligible people, so 78% had their MMR1 vaccination. 250 of 298, so 72% had their MMR2 vaccination. MMR2 rate is always lower because you have to have had MMR1 in order to have had MMR2. But they're both much lower than the WHO recommended 95%. So any cases of measles could lead to an outbreak or problems that brings. So we can look at the different groups I described and then filter it and slice and dice. So an example that we can cross that with, you put a different group. So look at Asians or Asian British, which is a very, very broad group. So what this can show you here is a different uptake rate. So here it's much higher than 93%. I'm not saying this isn't real data, but it's an example of how it can vary. This is a smaller cut of the population, so this is more like 10,000 people rather than 200,000 people talking about initially the whole population. That takes much higher. Let's take another look at a different group. A pattern view services when you get an extra group will not stated. And that basically means either I don't need to tell you, I'm withholding information, or generally the data quality is poor. And in this subset of data people, which isn't a tiny number of people, it's 30,000 people and 200,000. Suddenly the MMR2 rate is really low. It's under 50%. That's very, very low. So that it shows you that in certain population groups, they're not really necessarily defined by various means their is really low and is not good to focus on. We can also slice and dice by age group. So you get some patterns that's very obvious, like not many 3-year-olds who have their MMR2 jack, but others that show changes of things like the legacy of that weight for the autism scale and what can have an effect on certain ages. So the territory also can be divided up further than precisely groups. So it might have PCA names. So ICBs tend to be subdivided into, well, ICBs are working groups of GP practices, like PCNs and kind of their networks. They're just basically practices working together, but our team has got a methodology for giving them a sort of footprint in the area of influence. So here are some phones of typically PCNs. I've just given you the numbers here, PCN and PCN, PCN2. They tend to have quite dry names, so things like West Basildon PCN. But while scanning through this, I found on the side we ran PCN, and I saw another one called Alpha PCN, which sounds very exciting. So they can have different names. I can use these figures up here to select different PCNs, and you can see what how different areas have different names. So this PCN3 in the Lethbridge I've placed in close to Hale Mine with its T rooms and bookshelves. And here you can see that the rate is 89%. So it's doing a little bit better than typically with the data could also be aggregated, so not just in terms of area of residence, but also to GP practice and speed. So find in that cultural practice, the data can also get aggregated up by GP practice. So with the practice and what I've done in the center, the details of how many groups so the point of this app is to now allow NHS England staff and people they work with to be able to do targeted interventions. So which schools or GP practice areas to focus on. Where to target comms. Sometimes you want a mobile service like an Interest, but you also take that. Since we created this initial demo, we've now got live apps which show additional features. So they change over time, so our audience can see the impact of their They can also filter just to focus in on the core 20 areas. We've done experimental work like building catchment areas for schools. So you can see that, for example, the vaccination rate at a school is very low. You can see exactly where the patients need school campus are coming from. Areas where we might want to focus if you want to focus on the school example, the vaccination setting. This is fairly worthless, but we're ambitious to take it further. So Geospatial just looks at children. The people we work with in NHS England are very keen to understand the adult population as well. Data is harder to get hold of because it's quite different systems to choose for the adults, but we'd love to be able to take it further to the adult population. And there are other vaccination programs. So we've worked on COVID and flu in the past. There are other childhood vaccination programs. There are other adult ones as well. What we want to do is hopefully continue this work and make the valuable immunisation in public health teams more efficient. We do what we can without unnecessary costs, both in terms of health and financial impact in the future, using information as using geospatial services. So that's the end of my slides for the time being. If anyone has any questions, I'm really happy to take them. Just aware that just being staring through any way these things. If there's anything that's been chatted, anyone who's got a hand up, I thought it was very interesting.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you very much for that very interesting presentation. I'm sure everyone who's on the call will join me in thanking you very much for your time and taking the time to go through that with us. Just as a reminder, if you've got any questions, please put those in the chat and we'll attempt to cover those off now. I don't know, Rich, would you mind stopping your screen share, but feel free if you need to do it again, just to answer any of the questions. And yeah, if anyone wants to raise their hand to actually ask a question, that's fine, but I will look now at some of the ones that have come through in the chat. So we have possibly a short question here from Mason Ibrahim saying, thanks, Richard, for the talk. Can I ask which software is being used to create the dashboards that you've been showing?
Yeah, so we use Esri's suite of products. So the desktop version of that, I think what we're doing is in the Esri is called ArcGIS Pro. And then what we use, the most familiar version is called ArcGIS Online, and data is hosted in Esri's sort of data sharing environment, but ours is a slight variation for the where the data is, it all works the same, but the data is in our own service for saving and all that. So Esri is the institute.
Oh, okay, thank you. And there's another question in the chat from Saloka saying, if I wanted to look at regional data on a particular topic, for example, enrollment into pediatric research studies, would I need to collaborate with your team to understand the differences by integrated care board, for example? Do you get involved in the development of research studies?
We do a little bit. We've started looking at some work with University of Birmingham. I mean, like typically our relationships are directly with integrated with ICBs and NHS England. So it doesn't tend to be quite so research focused. It tends to be operational. And then probably need solving, but we certainly can do things like that. We've just got to follow where we can be funded to fund this and run. So, like I said, we're looking at something with Birmingham. You know, we'd like to try and get on board with some program for research and so on the back of the university. It's not typically what we do, but we wouldn't say no if the work's funded and it's valued. So yeah, we're always interested. We're always interested to speak to. So something that do necessarily.
Thank you. And they've said thank you very much. Very interesting in the chat as well. Another question from D saying, what are your challenges in acquiring data in the NHS context? How do you go about working around these challenges?
Not very perceptive. Yeah, I mean, often we know what the problem is, we know what we want to do, and getting to the data is often a huge problem. It's a huge area of work. So there's typical stuff about data quality. You need to get hold of the right data and being sure that it's correct. So sort of typically what ABCs of data is this complete and accurate and accountable. There's also all the IG considerations I talked about. So typically it'll often not be completely transparent who the data belongs to and who is allowed to tell you that you're allowed to have it. So if it's collected by one organisation for a specific purpose, they're in charge of it, and they say, yes, I will have it. It's straightforward. But the NHS, local authorities, it's quite a complicated landscape, so that can be problematic. Getting people to take responsibility for it, signing of documentation, it really can take a long time. So, what in my sort of happy hair is like, you can get something started in a few days. You could, if you had perfect data ready to go, can actually be, weeks, months if you're to get the data flowing. So, and then sometimes there's simply working out where the data sits, how to get it flowing technically. It might be, there might be some data that's actually good quality ready to go, but it's quite hard to use API, and you need to work out how to get it flowing. Likely there might be some technical barriers to doing it. But yeah, it's usually just working with somebody what it is. And a lot of the time it's granularity. So particularly around inequalities, there's lots of groups where no one would argue that these are vulnerable groups of people who need special attention. So things like homeless, refugees, little children. But these are very hard groups of people to track and get information about. Well, they're not necessarily very slow. They're not necessarily very slow numbers. So we looked at work about, so looked at the children in South West of England. There is some data available, but it only shows you at local authority district level. So that doesn't show you with any real granularity where the issue is. It doesn't give you much to feel about those records. So hopefully that's been a bit of an inspiration of other data. So it really is a big thing. It's often a bit frustrating if you do say a sample piece of geospatial exercise. You'd be given perfect data and expect something beautiful, which is very relevant. Often the real work is finding is going on with the best person. What's the way?
Great, thank you very much, Rich. That's, I think, about as much time as we have. There's just a little word from me on feedback that we would like to request from everyone, if we can. There is a feedback form link that's been shared in the chat now, and there's an opportunity to win a £50 gift voucher to one lucky person who fills it in, to try and encourage people to fill in the feedback forms, because I know it's always very difficult. So if you see that link in the chat, we would strongly encourage that you press that to leave feedback that we can learn to make our events better. Just kind of final word from me, just again to thank Rich for his very interesting talk, and thank you to the people that asked questions, and to everyone for joining us today. And I have one final slide just to share with everyone as well, which is just to reiterate what I said right at the beginning, that this talk is part of a whole series of events, and this is the first day of events that's going on now. So again, there's more links in the chat, but we strongly encourage that you take a look at those, and if you can make it on Thursday, we'd love to see you at City Hall in Bristol. If you do want to share anything on social media, please use the hashtag Bristol Data Week. But other than that, thank you very much again to Rich, and thank you to everyone that attended. Thank you very much.